Hi, everyone. This is Tom with CertifID. Excited to get things kicked off on this month's To Catch a Fraudster webinar. Just going to give everyone about 45 seconds here to come into the room, and then we will get started. This is going to be a really good discussion today. Cannot wait. So I'll be back with you in about 30 seconds from now. All right, in the interest of time, I think we'll get started. Thanks, everyone. We're excited to continue our new webinar format here to Catch a Fraudster each month. We're committed to delivering just an analysis of how fraud is trending throughout the industry, how it's impacted parties in a transaction. We're going to meet Taylor here in just a minute, and ways that it could have been prevented. So kind of some call outs to take back. Obviously, our focus last year was the Protect and Prosper series. I can just tell you that we're seeing more fraud starting this year, the first few months of this year, than we've seen in a couple calendar quarters last year. So by way of housekeeping, we've got a lot of content to cover. This is a great story, and I'm excited to introduce our guests in just a minute. If you have questions, put them in the questions panel of Zoom. We will have time to walk through at the end. I'll make sure we carve out at least 10 minutes to field questions as we have a special guest this month. And everyone will receive a recording of the presentation. This is one that, like all of them, you're probably going to want to play back to your staff and would be a great lunch and learn for real estate agents or other referral partners that you might have in market. So we have the next 2 months already planned for To Catch a Fraudster. We're going to have some special guests from federal law enforcement. We'll be talking about aggregate stats about 2020 that'll be coming out from the IC3. So again, great storytelling, timely trends and tips to keep everyone safe. All right, without further delay, let's kick things off. We have a very special guest today. I've gotten to know Taylor in a weird way, right? So we were involved in a wire fraud recovery in late January. Taylor is gracious enough to share his story with us as industry participants. He is a second-time home buyer. He happened to be buying an iBuyer property that was owned by Redfin at the time. And we are going to walk through how Taylor ended up wiring his earnest money deposit safely, how then the fraudsters approached him to divert his cash to close for just under $80,000, how we were able to get that back. But more importantly, Taylor and I were talking yesterday just about what it's like to be in the home buying process right now. If any of you have not looked at statistics, and I was looking at them again this morning, nationally, we dip below 2 months of inventory. So it's just a really stressful process. So we're going to unpack what happened, why it happened, how it could be prevented. With that, Taylor, let's walk through the journey that you had on finding your second home, because you were in a condo and you were looking for just more space, like a lot of people are right now. But we put together, a timeline that started roughly on Thanksgiving and cast through almost the end of January before the house is under contract. But could you just kind of shed light for the group on what's it like right now to try to find a property?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you having me on. It's definitely a privilege to be able to kind of turn this experience that's normally not a positive one, and hopefully be able to kind of turn that and spin that and make that be a benefit to some other people. So yeah, I'm up here in the Denver metro area. And so like Tom was saying, with inventory being what it is, right, Denver is definitely a hotbed for all of that. You have Denver being like top 10, top move to cities during the pandemic and stuff, right? So we are facing a very severe shortage. And so I started looking at homes, a little bit before, probably kind of starting out in November, just kind of see what was out there, see what I could do, run some numbers on things. And, with interest rates being what they were, I'm like, what, time's good, right? I'm a tax guy. So November, December is the time to move. And so I decided to go ahead and pull the trigger on that. cleaned up the condo and listed the condo kind of the week of Thanksgiving just to kind of see what was happening. That way I could start putting offers in on properties, because it's kind of hard to put a contingency out there when you don't have the item that you're supposed to be selling available for sale yet. And so really it was kind of starting a week after I had actually put my own condo on the market. I started making offers, and I was about an offer a week, being very picky, but we're in an environment, at least here in the Denver metro area, where a home gets listed and then it's under contract in 24 to 48 hours. I don't know that I've seen a property that was, a solid property, not having anything wrong with it, like mold or structural or anything like that, that wasn't under contract in less than 48 hours. So it was a very kind of just, process where you just got to be on it, checking the MLS 4 or 5 times a day. You can't wait for the automated emails and all those kinds of things. And so that process kind of continued on through December. The first part of December was pretty disappointing, right? Because you're just immediately getting shot down because you've got 8 other offers competing against you that don't have any contingencies on them, right? And so why would they go with you? And so we get to the end of December, and then we get to the point where, okay, I'm clear to close on my condo. And so we had established a rent back provision on my side for the sale. And so I had 60 days as a matter of contract, but I gave my buyer a tacit agreement that I would be out by the end of January, because her lease on her apartment ended the end of January, and being a tax accountant, right, I'm very motivated to be out by the end of January as well. And so, my closing date in the condo was actually December 30th. I had signed everything ahead of time because I was on vacation. And so they closed without me. Everything was fine. And then I came back from vacation and just immediately hit the grind again to try to start putting offers in on houses. And so finally, on January 5th, actually, I guess add some extra color to the degree of frustration I've had to go through here. On January 5th, I went to see the property that I ultimately ended up purchasing here, right? Well, because Redfin, had purchased the property, they had changed the deadbolt and, done the Wi-Fi smart deadbolt and everything. Well, the agent who had the showing immediately before us locks the doorknob just out of reflex, right? Just reflexively locks the doorknob. Well, there was no key to the doorknob. Redfin had the key to the deadbolt in the door, and none of the instructions said to lock the doorknob, but here we are, lock the doorknob. So my agent and I get to the property. We can't get inside. And then, the people behind us can't get inside. And so I put an offer on it anyway. I'm like, you know what? I can't, I'm not going to miss out on this. And so Redfin got the locksmith out there, and then the locksmith put a new lock on the door that actually coincidentally doesn't have a lock on it anymore. And then we went and actually looked at it the next day, and that was January 6th. And then the night of January 6th, they chose my offer. I think the total offer pool on that house was 8. And it was listed, I think, the morning of the 5th. So between the morning of the 5th, evening of the 6th, 8 offers, including mine.
So just to back this up, how quickly did you have your contract under sale after you listed it?
I think it was about 2 weeks. So okay. I listed pretty high, and then I came down on my condo a little bit to intentionally undercut an identical unit in the complex that had been on the market for a while. And so I undercut that by $5,000. And once I undercut that, it was like less than a week.
And then every offer, you had 5 offers until yours was accepted. And correct me if I'm wrong, but all of them, you were like 10-day close, and you were above ask on every one of them.
Yeah. So on the first 2, I wasn't, because I was early enough in the process where I wasn't there yet. So I was trying to close kind of the same day. So that the first week of December, or, the offers that I was making, I was trying to time that to where I was closing the end of December at the same time. But yeah, the last 3 offers, I think I was, I was at least 15,000 over on each one of them. And a 10 business day close on every single one of those as well. And I was passed up except by, the one that I ended up getting. Even being
so let's pivot to that. So you were under contract early January for your new home, right? I love the fact that you put an offer in without even walking inside. You weren't able to walk inside till the next day because of the whole iBuyer nuance and the lock and that. But here was based on the information you gave, this was kind of the timeline for closing. You had a really tight, compressed time frame for closing. You were pre-qualified. Like you say, you're a CPA, so you're on the much more sophisticated side of the spectrum. You're a second time buyer, so you've been through the process before.
Right.
But essentially the track was early January under contract, and you were gonna close within almost a 2-week period. Your original close date was the 21st, right?
Absolutely.
You had sent earnest money of 4 in on January 7th. By mid-January, just about a week later, you had a clear to close. And then ultimately leading up to January 25th, you had an appraisal issue that moved the closing date. Isn't that what, from January 21st to January 25th? Is that right?
Yeah. So what ended up happening there, because everything was so very compressed, right? So, earnest money goes out the day after the offer. And then, a couple of days later, I think the following Monday or something like that, had the inspection and got through that and sent them the resolution. So we're just on top of everything. And then the appraiser comes in out of nowhere and undervalues the property by like $35,000, and looked this guy up online, and, he thinks he's Superman and vigilante and, saving the taxpayers from preventing 2008 by, undervaluing, one property at a time type of a thing. And so I reviewed his appraisal. I critiqued his appraisal pretty severely. And I included a response that he had to a poor review online as well, and submitted that back to my agent, submitted that back to the bank. My lender rather, and they're like, yeah, this is terrible. We'll get you a second one. We'll put a rush on it, and then we'll actually pick up the cost of the first one. And it was so poorly done. I actually submitted a formal complaint to DORA, which for those of you on the call who aren't familiar with that, is the Colorado Department of Regulatory Agencies, which is the umbrella under which all professional licenses are maintained. So appraisers, CPAs, all your little 3-letter acronyms that come after people's names and stuff. And so that pushed things back by a few days. And so we moved our contractual closing date out to the 29th, which was the following Friday. Because the 21st here was a Thursday. And so we actually ended up closing on Monday, but we pushed the contract out to the following Friday, just to give ourselves some extra wiggle room here, and not, say, hey, we're going to come in here, we're going to be super earnest, really good faith, get this thing knocked out for you, make it very, very easy, and be the easiest non-cash buyer you've ever had, and then blow all that up because of some bumps in the road here. So.
Well, that's what I want to highlight, is just as we walk through the transfer of your cash to close and in the journey of that in the hands of the fraudster and back, I guess I just want everyone to know that this is the journey that we hear a lot around buyers right now. It's a super competitive, multiple offers. You're a CPA. You had mentioned you're clocking in over 200 hours in January, right? I mean, it's like you got to get this done, but life doesn't stop. And then you have this massive bump in the road with the appraisal that is just like layer on layer on layer of what I would just call stress and likely fatigue. Is that a fair way to say it?
Oh, absolutely. I was tired. I wanted off of this ride before we even get to the whole point of why we're here.
Right.
I was done, Tom. I was exhausted. Because like I said, this was offer number 6. I think if you want to get super technical, it might've been 7, because I had a contract drawn up on a property and they accepted something out from under everybody else who was still putting stuff in, and so I was tired, and it's like, hey, what else do I have to do? I'm giving you more than you're asking for, by almost an order of magnitude here, and the fastest close that you could ever have. I'm closing and getting, and these are vacant properties too. It's not like, hey, we're still living in it and we need rent back provisions and blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Like, these are vacant properties. So an expeditious close is a huge motivating factor, because you have all these carrying costs, and that still wasn't enough. So yeah, I was absolutely just at the end of it here, and I was tired, and that's kind of, what ended up getting me, right? I was depressed to a point where all the kind of normal little nuances and stuff that kind of, sound alarm bells that I normally pay attention to and normally detect, I'm just kind of side-eyeing emails and not doing things like I'm supposed to be, and not paying enough attention on my part because of the fatigue, and all of that kind of stuff.
And I think you're not alone. If anything, just because of your education and your job, and I mean, you sit at, like, I would say the more sophisticated end of the home buying spectrum. I mean, think about a first-time home buyer, somebody buying with somebody else, and they're trying to coordinate, all this stuff. And I guess this is where, as industry participants, I think we take a second and say, what are we hearing from? Are we even listening to the Taylors of the world Or are we just taking a new order and saying, oh, you know, another quick contract, let's rush through title and let's get clearance done and let's get this thing to closing, not understanding that they're battle fatigued through this process before they even hit our doorstep. And I don't mean that in a bad way, Taylor. This is what we're hearing nationally. And what it means for us guys is that I would argue we have to be doing even more from a protection standpoint, because their guard is down. They're just like, look, I don't care if you're asking me to, you know, whatever, just get me in this property, you know, at this point. So ultimately, the cash to close wire did not land. And I want to unpack, Taylor, this is a really interesting story about how the fraudster initiated communication. So based on everything that I've looked at and we've had analyzed along with the Secret Service in the recovery, is it started with an email compromise. And for everyone on the webinar, we talk about that. Like, I would argue probably 95% of all wire frauds now start with some originating email that has been compromised. I think based on this is likely the mortgage loan officer, the mortgage broker, but I don't know definitively to the mortgage broker, or it was one of the real estate agents. But Taylor, it wasn't you. We know it wasn't you. And
that's good, because in this whole process, right, I went back to my IT group, you know, because I work for a very large firm, right? So I'm like, you know, all the bells are going off once this finally happened, right? And you know, freaking out would be an understatement. And so, you know, I was making phone calls all day long, and just one of those phone calls was to my IT groups, like, hey guys, I messed up, you know, like all those PDF and those emails that you send. Well, I got hit by a real one. You know, I don't know what you need to do. I don't need to know if you need to light my computer on fire, you know, like figure it out, just alarm bells, you guys do your thing, you know. And they said that, you know, they didn't see any compromises on my side and just said, change my password. And of course, I'm sitting in my empty condo, changing my password, and I fat finger my password twice in the same way. And then I can't get back into my computer because I typoed, only me, you know, typoing my password twice the same way to set it up the new time. And I had to call, and of all the little things that kind of add on to this little, you know, story here, Tom, it's incredible.
Yeah. So the next layer of it is really smishing. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, this is where the fraudster is using a text message as the entry point to impersonate a trusted party. And I want to show you the text string. And normally I wouldn't do this, but it gets so personal, and the texture of this message is just so almost spot on that it would be very disarming. It's very trustworthy. So this whole interaction with the fraudster, rather than an email, starts with a text message and then transfers Taylor over to email to get more confidence that the communication coming to him can be trusted, and ultimately delivers fraudulent wiring instructions. So I guess to summarize, they did some work on this before they just willy-nilly forwarded information to him to rely on. So on Friday, again, Stephanie is the wife of the loan officer that you were dealing with, right, Taylor? So it was a husband and wife team. Stephanie was the wife. Okay.
Yeah, and to note that too is it's they work together as well, right? So they're husband and wife, but they're actually a professional team as well. And so that's why this makes sense, right? It's like, well, why the heck would you know, his wife's not a first grade teacher somewhere, you know, they actually work in the same offices at you know, part of the same team. And the reason this kind of got me is I had never actually spoken to her, and never had any contact with her before. I mean, well, that should be kind of an alarm bell. It's like, well, I know they work together. This is a 10-day close, right? So we're on it. This is all hands on deck here. Right. And so it didn't come as a surprise to me at all that Stephanie would reach out to me, especially with this being Friday, because the new appraisal had just dropped. Right. And so dealing with these issues, and then, oh, hey, you know, David's going to be in a meeting. Jackie's tied up with somebody else. It's okay. Stephanie's got availability. She's just going to reach out to me. It's like, hey, do you have any questions about the second one? It's like, nope, I just got the second appraisal, which is, you know, my message here in green to say, hey, and so the timing, I don't know if the timing was just lucky on their part, because it really is truly extraordinary, or if that was actually part of the planning and execution that they knew. It's like, hey, you know, we just got the second appraisal. Okay, yep, I reviewed it. It's that value. We're done. You know, we're good.
No, this is the level of social engineering that we're seeing and we'll see more of. So again, for everyone on, I mean, use this as an example. That said, it doesn't have to come in. It could have come in on a phone call. This came in through a text message. He had never met Stephanie. They had the address. I don't think any of this is coincidental, Taylor. It's too accurate to be coincidental. They're not that good, right? They're in someone's email on one screen and they're spooling up a text program or a mobile device from the other. So you can see here where Stephanie is making just a simple, we sent you an email. So what they're doing is they're trying to credential the emails that I'm going to show you in a minute. Like, hey, Taylor, sent you some emails, but just wondering if you had any questions. Taylor responds in green. No, I don't. Should be completely good. Again, moving to close. This is Friday, the 26th, moving to close on that Monday. Also, so here's where they start to weave in. Do you have your cash to close ready? Is it be required prior to closing in order to ensure a smooth closing? I'll let you know when the company to have it wired to the title company's office. Please confirm receipt. That is a phenomenally written statement. Usually at that level, we see the word kindly. We see them trip up on just some syntax or some texture in that communication. That's one of the best kind of initial requests or flyover to Taylor saying, hey, by the way, I'm not going there right now, but we have to go here. You respond and say, what's the final dollar amount based on the cash to close? I'm ready to go. It continues again on Saturday. So here's where the word kindly does show up. I'll say it every single webinar. It is the #1 word used by fraudsters as it relates to wire fraud. There's no other word close to be a trigger than the word kindly. If you see it, you got to slam on the brakes. So kindly check your email. Please confirm receipt. The amount of cash to close is at. Happy weekend, right? So it's very personal. And he replies, yep, I did reply. Do I need to directly state that I confirm receipt? Everything is fine. Enjoy your weekend. So again, just a quick interaction pass over an hour. Now Monday morning shows up, right? Morning, kindly check your email. I'll show you those in a minute. We've got now instructions on where to wire. He asked for a phone call. This was, again, brilliant on their part, and they do it all the time. They redirect the request to the phone call by saying, hey, just check your email. David's busy. He instructs, so here's a little grammatical error, to ask you to wire. Now in the middle of this, and Taylor, you're a self-professed kind of grammar nut. You're packing a U-Haul. Your mama just coming to town. You're packing a U-Haul, and like you say, you're side-eyeing these text messages because you're trying to get what you need done to deliver possession of your condo.
Right. And to say that too. Yeah. I mean, I spent time as a writing tutor in college, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, instruct or instructs or whatever, is it a little odd? Yeah. But at the same time, it's, keystroke, autocorrect. We're dealing with all this kind of nonsense, right? I mean, I just 2 weeks ago got an update, software update, my phone, Tom, I can barely type the word there because it autocorrects something else. And it's like, really? Or will like it autocorrects words that I correctly type in there, and I have to go like type a word that's on the opposite side of the keyboard like 4 times in my phone because it's like really. And so like for the text message stuff, like did I between the side eye and all this autocorrect nonsense, like did I attribute much mind to it? No. And like you said, this is Monday morning. I'm closing Monday. This is January. This is busy season. So I am up, still working on Red Bull and actively packing a U-Haul. So I've got my phone kind of on a shelf in the garage, knowing that we're trying to close. So I'm packing a U-Haul in the morning, closing at 2 o'clock this afternoon, and then finishing packing U-Haul. My mom is coming to the airport, so I'm trying to do what I had laid out in 4 days in terms of moving timeline, trying to compress this into 2. So I'm not taking an insane amount of time off of work and just put myself behind on hours and stuff that I need to be able to get done here at the office. Actually weren't at the office at the time, but trying to get all that set up. So I have to get my office set up at the new house to be able to work because I can't come into the office because the office wasn't open yet. And so the stress level, was kind of a fever pitch, probably, coming through the weekend here and coming into Monday morning and stuff. And so that's part of what got me too as well. It's just like I said before, is you get distracted and you get to that point where you're not noticing the alarm bells and stuff, like the word kindly. Like how many times have I not read the word kindly? Like, oh, well, nobody whose English is a first language talks like that ever.
Yeah. No. And I get it. So then the request for the exact amount comes through. And that's how we knew that there had to be a compromise. And just for those of you that aren't super technical, you don't just get to pick an email out of thin air and then start to read it. And even with encrypted email, there's a secure socket between the servers that protects that transmission. So they're clearly reading in real time. And I'll show you why 76 and not 88,000 is a very significant number because of gift of equity that came in at the last minute. I mean, they absolutely had access to the numbers of what he needed for closing, without a doubt. So they said, again, I'm going to send you an email. We'll send you, right now, that's the number I expected. No problems. I'll log in. And then, hey, David, send an email, a wire confirmation slip once your wire transfer is complete. So what they're doing is, this is a money launderer. They need to know when it's en route. They want what's called the Fed ref number on that wire. They then would track it into their bank account and immediately, transfer it out into crypto or other money mule accounts around the country. And then we continue on here. I have to go to my bank. You couldn't do it through online banking. Yes, David received the transfer slip. We'll see him a message. And then, so he's kind of hammer texting you a little bit over this like 40-minute period, which I found was interesting because you said the wire went out, meaning you were just leaving your bank at Chase and they hadn't received confirmation. So that's the string of like, boom, boom, boom. Where's the confirmation of the wire coming through, right? And then, kindly confirm you received the message from David. I'll show you those. Got it. Did you receive the message clear today? So it's like, it's all coming through. But then look at this. Everything is good to close. Have a great day. So it ends in this just really soft kind of handoff. They saw they had the funds transferred into their account. Have a great closing, looking forward to it. And then even at the end, you closed on Monday. Congratulations on your new home. Thank you for making this, such a great such a smooth transaction. Have a great day. And then they do something weird about, hey, regarding the warranty of the house, I need a copy. That didn't even make any sense. But
yeah, well, not to cut you off too bad here, Tom, but yeah, so what it was, a home warranty, or like with First American or something else of that nature was included by Redfin with that. So how exactly they became privy to that information, I mean, if they had access to everything else, they had access to that. But again, the funny part is to add, I guess, a little bit of extra color here. When I got that message, that last message from there, I was actually literally on the phone with the FBI when I got that message. So this, Tuesday morning, I got the call from the Wells Fargo department, like the fraud and loss prevention department, saying, hey, the name on the account that you wired it to didn't match the name on the wiring instructions. And so we were we put a kind of a pause on this, wanted to call you confirm. And then that's kind of when, my attitude took a significant turn. And, kind of got through that. And I was in my bank trying to get things, situated and killed and stuff. And I'm on the phone with the FBI while I'm sitting in my bank, sweating bullets, freaking out, somebody hand me a brown paper bag, kind of a thing here. And before I actually filed the report with the IC3.gov website, I gave them the phone numbers, like, hey, I don't know what you can do with this, but this phone number is still active. So I don't have time to file a report for you right now because I've got so much else that I have to take care of.
Right.
But like, look into this phone number, look into your IP address originations, like whatever it is that you guys do. But they are literally like, we are on the phone talking and like, they just sent me another text message.
Right. Yeah. There's someone on the other end of this for sure.
Yeah.
And didn't you call the Wells Fargo number and the guy said he was going to be out for a couple months?
So that was weird. And so, yeah, so they called me, the Wells Fargo, supposedly, right? And I think it's legit. I don't know. I was suspicious. My mom could have called me on caller ID and told me it was my mom. I'd be like, you're lying to me. I was not in a state of trusting on Tuesday afternoon. But yeah, they called me Tuesday morning and I said, okay, well, this is the 800 number. What's a direct line for you? And so he gave me his direct line. I wrote it down. I got to the condo, compared the wiring instructions from the earnest money wire that I had to the, closing cost money that I had, and then noticed that they were different. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm an idiot. So this is a problem now. Now it's game on. And so I called that number back immediately. It's like, oh, okay, same person answered the phone. Syntax was good, nothing funny about it. And it's like, no, kill it. It's bad. Kill it. And then like, okay, I'm gonna go down to my bank, see what they can do. It's like, okay, yeah, you do that. And then I called back again from my bank. And it's like, oh, hi, this is, Mr. Ortiz or Cameron or whatever his name was with the Wells Fargo Loss Prevention Department. I'm out of the office and won't be back until June. So at that point, I really started freaking out because I'm like, okay, well, now these people are calling me pretending to be the Wells Fargo fraud department to then figure out if, alarm bells and they need to go actually withdraw the money faster to see,
Right.
because it was in there for a while. And then that's what you guys will see and notice here, the unusual piece of it. It was in the bank account for in excess of 24 hours.
So let me put a pin in this, Taylor. I want to tie out the communication, then I want to bring you kind of to the moment where you learn that your funds were stolen, right? So
Yeah, for sure.
let me walk through the social engineering part of it. So we got through the text messaging. This is the communication string where they were pushing Taylor to basically season all of this stuff that was coming through Stephanie on the text. So here's David. David is obviously spoofed. If you look at the email header, I can share these with you with Taylor's permission here. So
Absolutely,
basically
yeah.
it's saying, the closing costs are remember I said there's a very significant nuance between 78 and 88, 76 and 88. The original cash to close was 88,532, right? And you could pick this email apart. There's some spacing differences and some letters capitalized, but this was the first email on Saturday that lined up to the text message saying, check your email box. Then right after, so Chris is the escrow officer spoofing title forward. Chris, the fake Chris, responds to the spoof David, copying Tyler saying, confirming receipt, thanks. And we've seen this before where they'll create these synthetic identities for trusted parties in a transaction. Taylor is admittedly side-eyeing this as he's packing up the dishes in the U-Haul, saying, okay, well, it looks like David says it's good and Chris says it's good from the title company. So, what's coming next? And you had responded, okay, I'll set up the wire as soon as I see your instructions. So basically like put a stamp of approval. I got the information. I know what to send the information over. This is the email early Monday that again coincides with those messages from the text message string from Stephanie, where he's asking him to wire that amount of 88,532. And then these are the wiring instructions that were attached to that email. This is what I found really interesting, where the fraudster said, you're right. Let's net that $12,000 gift of equity off the wire for the closing. And that simple sentence, I would argue, is one of the most credentialed sentences in this entire string, because they didn't over rotate on explaining anything. It was like, look, gift of equity, new amount to wire is that amount. So I guess, Taylor, just because I've been a wire fraud victim, I could give you my own experience, but I guess we want to hear it in your words. What was it like in the moment when it set in that your money was sent to the wrong account and was likely stolen?
It was not good. There aren't a lot of, professional words that adequately kind of describe that state of mind that you get put into. Because really, for a lot of people on call, right, you probably, oh yeah, it's less than, it's 5 figures, right? It's less than 6 figures. I see numbers bigger than that on my spreadsheets and stuff every day, but kind of to the point of the conversation that you and I had earlier this week in preparation of this phone call, right? That, I'm a young dude. That's my life savings, right? I leveraged all the capital gains off my condo to roll into this house. That's all I got, or very near to all I have. And so I don't have a source with which to replace that. And so here I am, the condo's closed. Now I have no money. Am I going to have to go get, rent someplace and then basically start over and get into the rent cycle that I've very specifically avoided this whole time? And, it just is a slurry of thoughts, definitely like, too bad, it's not like, hey, give me your wallet, right? Because at least there's I was talking to one of my coworkers, like, yeah, there's no risk on their part, right? And so that's the infuriating thing. You go hide somewhere halfway across the world, and there's not a confrontational aspect. If you're going to come up to me and say, hey, I'm going to steal your life savings out of that cashier's check that you have in your coat pocket, there's a certain degree of like, okay, well, you're going to have to physically take it from me. And there's a certain degree of risk that you're kind of assuming. And then, on the other side, it's all smoke and mirrors and all that kind of stuff. So I wasn't good. And I hit go mode, and I was rushed down to Chase. I was in the other Wells Fargo branch. I was making phone calls. I was just talking, and it was, I had a migraine like I've never had a migraine before the next day. Woke up upside down the bed, took 2 Excedrin, and started, throwing up in the shower in the morning, and had to have my mom field some stuff for me that morning, because I just, it all had kind of decompressed into Wednesday, and then yeah, I was not in a great place. I felt better.
Yeah, sure. No, I get it. Let's talk about the fraud itself. So that amount was transferred on the 25th. We were engaged, and you had sent a signal from Chase to Wells Fargo, given some assurances, at least from Wells Fargo, who in your words did a great job of saying, yeah, I think we've got line of sight to the account and frozen. I got involved because we have a relationship with the title company, Title Forward, Redfin's title company, and it had just been, to your point, it had been in the account for 24, crossing in on 48 hours. Mm-hmm. And I was actually in route to Houston from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the minute I landed, I turned the phone on, and things are just, the boards lit up. I'm like, all right, something's happening. I didn't know who you were at the time, but it's really interesting how quickly this one was fun for me as well. One, I got quickly that, you were a home buyer and the life savings was at risk, and this money was, wasn't back to you. It was in flight. So we had gotten a request just before 10 o'clock. We have a special relationship with the Secret Service on funds recovery. So I'm literally like going through the jet bridge, waiting for my partner Tyler to pick me up in the ride share, and they're saying, look, we're teed up. Let's go on this one. From the time that we received all the information we needed to from the title company, which is essentially that email with the wiring instructions and a little bit of metadata, we were able to confirm that the funds were frozen and we're going to get redirected before 4 o'clock that afternoon. Why that's significant is we always try to hit a recovery before the Fed cutoff of when they're going to kind of lock down, because then you could be dealing with an overseas situation where, the next, 12 to 16 hours before they open is pretty critical. So all but $200, I think. And I just think this is a cheap shot that the bank even charged you to return the money, but
right.
They charge some processing fee to get your stolen funds back to you.
Right.
I guess, what did it feel like? Taylor, you and I weren't in direct communication, but I was in regular communication with the title company. I guess, what did it feel like when you got message back that, okay, federal law enforcement's involved? I don't know who these certified people are, but I guess they're in the background and we're pulling switches trying to freeze the funds.
Yeah. I mean, so I had called the FBI like before, the FBI was alerted to the situation before even, Chase had got, the guy at the local Chase bank had, taken it upon himself to get up out of his chair to go get the piece of paper that he needed to fill out to send to his other department. I'm very disappointed in my experience with the local Chase branch and all of this as well. But when I got the call from, I think it was Jackie and Katrina, I think they conference called into me, and Jackie's like, yeah, I figured I'd conference call you because you know my voice and there's no way you'd be trusting somebody else right now. Like, oh yeah, I'm Katrina. I'm going to help you get your money back. It's like, you can go pound sand. And then she turns out to be real and like one of the nicest people ever. And then I would have felt kind of bad. But it's like, oh yeah, as soon as these people have ties to Secret Service, I'm like, let's go get them. Let's get them, game on. Let's go.
So, and we've been involved in so many of these. I believe this is one of the ones that when they looked into the account, other funds were there from other recent frauds in the last 48 hours. So when those and we see this a lot when we work with the FBI or the Secret Service and an account is frozen. A lot of times you'll have multiple transfers in a 24 to 48 hour period. Other people have been defrauded. They just don't know it. So Taylor, just know that there's a kind of a multiple, a multiplier effect of, this whole recovery for others that were involved.
Yeah, that's good.
I guess let's just talk. I mean, I talk about how people, technology, and process can help prevent these types of things at scale. But I'm gonna stop sharing right now, and maybe you and I just have a conversation. And to the group, if you do have any questions, please start to spool those up. If you have a question about, Taylor and the persona as a home buyer, the recovery. I mean, this is a rare opportunity that we have a buyer that is willing to talk as articulately and as openly as Taylor to figure out, okay, what does this mean for our internal processes, and how do we think about protecting the Taylors of the world that are currently in our pipeline or are about to be in our pipeline because the order is going to come in today to protect their funds that we're asking them to send in. So Taylor, I guess in your mind, what could have been done in the middle of all this chaos and all this fatigue? And I mean, just put yourself back in the center and roll the tape back. Would it have been, more awareness, education? What could have stood out in the moment to you that Friday or Saturday leading up to the Monday transfer?
Yeah, well, so I mean, it's a cornucopia of errors, none of which kind of fell in my favor. So the first thing I think would probably be, as a matter of education, because for me, like I said, I'm kind of the more sophisticated, and I'm not an IT guru. You can say the word metadata, and I generally know what that is, right? But what happened to me is like, okay, I'm going to use my professional email, because when I have my computer, I'm behind a VPN all the time. And even then, it's kind of a double whammy, because if I'm at the office, I'm on a secure network. When I'm at home, I'm on a secure network. So using that VPN behind a secure network is kind of a double whammy. But even then, it's like, okay, I'm taking these measures to not be susceptible to this, right? I'm not using my Gmail. I'm not using, these other things, right, that are less secure in their nature. And so I'm like, okay, well, this can't happen to me, right? I'm wearing my seatbelt in the car, so I'm not going to get in a car accident, right? And there's a little bit of a fallacy in that line of thinking, which is on my part as well. And so my guard was down just kind of from the very beginning. It's like, I've done this before. It's just going to be a breeze. I had a high degree of confidence just going in with the actual process of dealing with the lender. And then the other thing too, I think, is a word of caution, right? We always tell these young kids, oh, get off your phone, right? But I'm going to go ahead and echo it here. Get off your phone. Because what happened to me, especially here, right? We see, oh, well, dcram@protonmail.com. Well, that's obviously a spoof email. Well, the email chain and actual email address itself doesn't appear behind the name when you have it open on mobile, right? And so when you sit there and you're half paying attention to this email because you're rushing through all these other things, and then you just see, hey, it's David. Hey, there's this signature at the bottom, and you just sit there, scroll, right, read every fourth word, and then you just hit that reply all and just have a quick thanks, and then push on about your day, right? It's going to get you. And so that's kind of a piece of it. I think we had a question pop up. I can kind of keep on a roll here real quick, or because the last part, I guess, on a matter of education is to say, I knew wire fraud existed. Anybody who's ever done, a home transaction or any sort of business transaction in life knows that wire fraud exists. But my problem was I didn't know what it looked like. And so instead of the red Honda Odyssey barreling down the highway, it's like, okay, that guy's just driving fast. Now you have, oh, that's the Amber Alert car.
Right.
Like, hey, yeah, they're gonna sit there, they're gonna hijack your lender's email, and you're not gonna be paying attention, and then they're gonna send you this kind of correspondence, right? And then they're gonna start texting you. I wasn't aware that I was gonna be playing a game like that, and so I wasn't looking out for playing a game like that, right? I mean, I've gotten 3 Amazon text messages this week about, oh, you won the Amazon raffle. It's like, no, I didn't. I'm not an idiot, and that's what we know, and that's what we know to look for. But what they don't tell you, right, is these 3 synthetic identities are going to be emailing each other, and they're all going to be texting you, and all this kind of stuff at the same time.
Do you think it would have been helpful, and we have a question come in that I'll address in just a second. They're starting to come in now, but do you think it would have been helpful if well, let me ask it a different way. Did your real estate agent advise you about the risk of wire fraud? So let's take you knew about it professionally, but did your real estate agent have an eye to eye, grab your face mask saying, look, Taylor, there's a thing out here called wire fraud. It's bad. Here's what to watch out for.
No, right. And that's and so that's the kind of conversation I think would be good to have, even with the more sophisticated people. I mean, because I sat there, right, and I called that Wells Fargo branch back once I got my money back, right, and just adorned all of the kinds of love onto, that person who helped me out that day, who may or may not have actually helped me out as much as I thought she did at the time. But I talked to the branch manager for like a half an hour, and she's like, yeah, as a matter of policy, we just call to follow up and to validate wiring instructions with the title company just because. And she said that she had somebody, same thing, much older than me, life savings of like 400 grand. And then she called and then put a stop on things. And he called her, cussed her out, was all sorts of angry, just absolutely irate. And then turns out, no, she just single-handedly saved his entire life savings at retirement age. Not like, hey, 27, young buck, you got time to go get it back. Life savings, like life savings, you're going into retirement. And, he changed his tune after that, and so I guess to say, like, everybody's kind of susceptible to it, and to a certain degree. But yeah, nobody had that conversation with me, like, hey, this is what it's going to look like if it goes bad. So, be on the lookout for those types of things.
Yeah, and that's something that we train at CertifID, and I'm also a large title agency owner, and we subscribe to the idea that a fully educated and engaged, constituency in the transaction. There's 7 players typically involved. You got sellers, you got seller agents, you got the lender, you got the buyers, you've got the title company, that everyone needs to, for the benefit of you and the seller, frankly, to be able to say, look, I need to own the burden, or the responsibility is probably a better word, of making sure that you're read into this. And I guess let me follow up on that question before I get to the audience questions is, do you feel that had you received 1 or 2 of those reminders, it could have triggered something?
Probably, and that's part of the problem here too, right? And then, a lot of this, is bad on me as well, because, we just sit here and went through it and wholly admitted that I wired earnest money correctly. So I knew what proper wiring instructions look like. I've done this before, not even that long ago, right? It was like a week ago. And had done that. And so for me, it was just the level of stress, the level of everything, and even then, you say, oh, well, we have they create a false sense of urgency. So for the people that we kind of, gone through here, it's like, oh, well, we created false urgency. They didn't, right? Because contractually, we weren't closing until that Friday. But when Monday morning, I'm expecting those wiring instructions to come through from the legitimate source on Monday morning, because we're closing at 2:00 that afternoon. So I'm packing a U-Haul, trying to get this stuff closed and trying to get the wiring and everything. So the urgency was already kind of there, built into the transaction and the time frame that I had kind of self-imposed to get all this done. And so it's still a little unknown to me whether they were privy to that time frame and privy to that Monday close, or if they were just trying to create false urgency ahead of the closing date that they thought was Friday. And so that's kind of ultimately kind of what happened there as well, is that you have to watch out for, another typical thing, right? You say that, work kindly, which, is, you go back and look, well, duh. You look at it backwards.
No, but we can all do that. I did that on our phone. We can all, Monday morning quarterback, all these things looking back.
But that urgency, right, is, your title company, the lender, they're not going to put that level of urgency on you. Necessarily. Now, if you've been slacking for 3 weeks getting your documents to them, like, hey, you got to get on it, then that's one thing, right? But they're not going to sit there like, oh, you got to wire the money like right now, but in my case, it kind of was, because we're closing in 4 hours.
Yeah, I've got a technical question that came in, and I'll just answer it. Is there one email system that's preferred one over another? If you haven't seen my LinkedIn post, guys, there was a massive breach in Microsoft. This Microsoft Outlook's on-prem email server. I think it affected 2013, 16, and possibly 19. If you haven't run those patches, 100%. Your 365 using VPNs, firewalls, multi-factor authentication, some on-site, YubiKey or type of tokenization, the things that Taylor was talking about. Like he was in a fortress. I mean, he works for a very, very large firm. They invest millions of dollars in security, and he had walls around him. But unfortunately, it's only as good as the weakest link in the transaction chain. And we've said that in this case, somebody, I would argue it's probably the mortgage broker, but somebody was flat-footed. They were compromised. Taylor, none of this is a coincidence. The timing, the everything, I think is just,
Right.
It's just too accurate not to be a well-orchestrated. They didn't misfire. They didn't over-rotate. They didn't raise a red flag in your mind at all, other than, yep, I'm closing at 2. It would make sense. I got to head down to the bank early morning to get that wire out. I mean, that's just so I want to wrap up here. Taylor, if you could give, I guess, one piece of advice on the webinar. We have attorneys, we have mostly title company owners and operators. What would that be as they seek to properly protect you in market as we head into what's going to be a very busy time? Spring market here is about ready to launch.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a kind of a two-prong answer, Tom. So I think the first thing is like, education, and doesn't have to be like some sort of sophisticated training. It's like, hey, if it doesn't look like this and take this exact form, do not follow it. Meaning if it has, it's email that's, has a PDF, we won't do that, right? We are not going to do this. It's going to be this way. You're going to have to click a link. You are going to have to follow this. If there's any deviation from that, it's bad, and just have a point blank conversation. Because for me, like I said, we're on the more sophisticated side of things, but you've got a whole slew of first-time home buyers out there that don't even know how much house they can afford because they go to the loan underwriter and the loan officer to have them tell them how much house they can afford. I didn't do that the first time. I ran my own numbers. I went in there, the first meeting I had with David, I had 3 years W-2s and said, I want to spend this much on a house, and so you have the nature of it in itself being difficult, and then all the overwhelming factors for the first time people that they're going to be similarly, I guess their guard's going to be similarly down as it was for mine, because I had an extra layer of stress on it as well. And then the last piece of it, so, in other subsequent conversations I had with, the loan officer and everybody else and that whole team, one of the loan officer's team members actually got a fake email in her inbox pretending to be me. And so I think, and not knowing and not having enough visibility onto what actually happened and what had actually transpired on that side, one thing I would maybe suggest is to say, hey, if any member of the team or any party of the transaction gets a fake email at any point in time, whether you're title, you're the attorney, whether you're the agent or, the loan officer or the seller or the buyer, like if anybody anywhere gets a fake email, alarm bells, just fox in the hen house, alert everyone to everything, because like, hey, you know what? My guard might be down. I might be not paying attention. But if somebody on the loan officer's team says, hey, fox in the hen house, I'm going to go back and like, oh my God.
Just shut it all down.
I almost got versus, oh crap, I got, right?
Yep.
And so I think that would be, and hey, you know what? Cause fake alarm, false panic. I would rather have false panic and go sit there and kind of swallow my tongue and going back through my inbox and not have a bad email in my inbox than, having gone through kind of everything I had to go through to get back to this point.
Well, Taylor, I think I speak for everyone. Let me see if there's any more questions, but thank you for coming on. Thank you for the transparency and just the honesty of the experience. And I'm sure that this will benefit, hundreds, if not thousands of buyers as we further socialize and get a better understanding of what they're up against, frankly, and what our role is to help protect you. As it doesn't matter how many times you bought a home, we have an obligation to make sure that you're protected, especially your life savings. So congrats on the new home. Looks like a beauty.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks again for participating in this webinar.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tom. I appreciate it. And hopefully it'll be beneficial to everyone here on the call. And hopefully we'll maybe prevent some of this happening to some people here in the future.
100%. Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
All right. Thank you. You too, Tom.
See you.